Hey guys, today we're going to talk about drone movements and why they play such an important role in drone videography. Movements can make or break your video. You can either be too jolty and unsmooth, which will throw your viewer off, or your movements could be too slow and boring. Your movements have such a large impact on your videos, especially when it comes down to editing. But briefly, the best way to ensure your edits flow nicely together is having similar movements. My most valued editing tip is to follow motion when editing. What this means is when you have two different clips next to each other, they should follow a similar movement. This way, when you cut from one scene to the next, the movement is seamless and you feel as if you're in the flow of the video. It's subtle but effective. So today we're going to be going through drone movements and why I choose to use manual movements over automatic functions. Now, automatic functions are great when you start off, but I highly recommend using manual mode as much as you can because that's how your shots are going to stand out in the future. If you can fly drones manually and achieve the same shots that you can in the automatic function, you just have a lot more flexibility and freedom when it comes to flying. So when you're out there shooting, it's fine to use automatic functions, but I highly recommend to just at least try manual functions for a bit as well. The trick to learning manual maneuvers is honestly just a lot of practice. I've been doing this for 8 years now, but it honestly didn't take that long. It was probably like less than a year before I was able to do some really complex movements. Now, when it comes to landscape, it's pretty easy to get simple movements. There's not really too much you should be doing. There's obviously just a push forward and pull back or top down shots flying straight up. But today we have a subject. Emily is going to be standing on top of a rock just behind me there. And I'm going to do a bunch of different drone maneuvers. It definitely helps having a subject and it's a great way to practice as well. Obviously you can use rocks or whatever, but they don't really move. So if you have a moving subject, there's a lot more that goes into it. So before we set the drone up, the first thing I usually do when I get to a location is obviously just check the weather conditions. So it's a little bit windy today, but it's not too bad. The skies are very clear and the wind direction is actually pretty good. So it's not really making the water very choppy. So that's why I chose to come down today. It should be a really nice sunset. And I think the wind is slowly dropping off as we get closer to sunset. We have about an hour till the sunset, so we'll see how we go. So once I'm at the location, I'll usually check what the surroundings are and if there's any obstructions that I could hit with my drone. This is super important when it comes to flying and getting these complex maneuvers because a lot of the time we are flying very fast and there is a risk to crash as well. So right now there's a couple of rocks around, but most of the space is very open. And I'm gonna get Emily to stand on that rock over there. So there's a lot of space below the rock where I can fly pretty freely. And a lot of the ground up here is pretty low, whereas the rock is sticking up a lot higher. So having a vantage point like that means there's a lot more freedom when it comes to flying around. So as soon as I see a vantage point like that, that is usually my go-to to shoot most of the scene at. And it's also very important to just check the flight zones as well. So this is a free flying area. There's no one around as well. So there's not any people to worry about crashing into. So also before I take off, I try to visualize some compositions before I even get in the air. So I can already picture that the point of the rock will be center of frame most of the time. And then working with the lighting is also very important as well. So we've got the sun setting right over the ocean. It's going to be too bright to shoot right now in that exact area. We will have the sun setting soon and it'll be a lot softer light. But for now, we're going to be shooting on a little bit of an angle from the sun. So we'll be shooting in the direction of the sun, but not directly into it. And I'll show you what I mean when we get the drone in the air. But as for framing as well, there's a lot of rocks that I could use in the foreground, so I keep that in mind too. But the first thing that I need to take into consideration is what ND filter I need to use. And right now the sun is still pretty bright, so we'll probably be using an ND8 or maybe an ND16 for this. We're going to turn the drone on and then we can see the exposure from there. So today is just a focus on drone maneuvers, but usually what I do in a shoot like this is also have the camera, which I'm shooting on right now, and I'll get some close-up shots of Emily on the rock as well, but I'm not going to do that today because we don't have as much time. It's important to do that because then you can tell more of a story. When you have a drone shot, it's very easy to hook someone in with an epic shot, but if you just keep using drone shots, they'll lose their interest pretty quickly. So what you do is you have some close-up shots to keep the viewers emotionally engaged. It's all about balance. So balancing the ground footage with the drone footage as well. So it's also important to get a lot of different paced shots. So I'm going to be shooting in 4K 50 in case I do need to slow down, but it's important to get slow shots, but also fast shots, unless you know exactly what you're going for. Usually on these shoots, I'm just shooting and then I'll make edits out of it later, but it's good to have a mix of different speeds so you can use with different songs or different pacing videos. You'll be thanking yourself later when it comes to post-production. Okay, so I'll start setting the drone up. All right, so today I'll be using the Air 3S, and first thing I want to do is turn the drone on, and I'm gonna check what it looks like without an ND filter. If you want your shutter speed to be correct and have natural motion blur, then you do need an ND filter because it's gonna be pretty bright. I'll just have a look what it looks like right now. I'm gonna do a screen recording so you can kind of see. What I'll do is basically, I'll grab the ND filters out and then I'll put them in front of the lens to see what looks best. And I'll just point the drone out of the landscape. And with a lot of drones, you actually can't change the aperture. So with my Mavic 3 Pro, I would usually change the aperture and you can have a lot more freedom when it comes to ND filters. But with pretty much every other drone, you don't have control of the aperture, which means you do have to change the ND filters a lot more regularly. So as you can see, it is very bright. You pretty much can't see anything. I'll grab my ND filters. So I might actually try the ND32 first because it is pretty bright. And if that looks too dark, then I'll use the ND8. Okay, so I'll just point it around in different directions. I've just got the controller so I can see it down there, but that looks pretty good so far. I know that as the sun goes down, I'm probably going to have to change the ND filter again. So I got to keep that in mind and be ready to quickly land and change the filters. So I'll have them ready to go somewhere. So as I probably should have mentioned is I do have the shutter speed already set on this drone. So it's 1/100 and the resolution is 4K and 50 frames. So 50 frames, 1/100, that's the correct shutter speed. So that's why it was bright already. I recommend setting that before you even take off. So checking your settings before you get in the air is very important. So as you can see, everything is looking good. The only other thing is I don't have much space on here, so I'm just gonna quickly clear the memory on this drone so I have some space. I'm trying to make a contraption so I can film the controller. The other thing that I want to discuss as well is having grid lines on your drone while you're flying it. And the grid lines just help keep everything exactly where you want in frame. So let's get this in the air. Okay, so go into the menu, go into camera, grid lines. So I usually use this point. You can use this as well, which I will put on today so we can really see everything perfectly in frame. So first movement I'm gonna do is just a simple fly, straight forward. So I'm actually bringing the drone slowly down at the same time. As you can see, she's right there, but the sun is facing in the wrong direction. So I'm just gonna get around, see if I can find a different angle to get. I'm actually gonna go a little bit lower. Okay, so what I've done is I've flown a little bit lower down to the rocks and the drone is sensing that there is rocks below, but to get Emily in the center of the frame here is what I wanted. And I'm just going to take a look around. There are quite a lot of rocks in the way here. So what I'm going to do is just fly a little bit forward. And then as I move sideways, I should be able to slowly pan around. So what I'm focusing on is trying to lock her in the center where that grid line is marked in the center. And then as I go, I can get a little bit faster. I know that there's nothing to crash into on this side. And just keeping that same movement is super effective. Obviously she can go a little bit out of frame and it doesn't matter too much because she's pretty much in the center the whole time. Faster and faster. So all I'm doing, basically finding a starting position, and then I use the stick on the right here, and I'll start moving right first. And then as I start moving right, I start curving around with this stick. So first movement is the right stick going right, find that speed, then quickly lock on in the middle, find and match the speed. And you'll find a balancing point. Now, the more that you do this, the better you'll get at it. And you'll be able to change your speed as you go. And then you'll even be able to just fly back and do a movement like that. So all I'm doing there is once I find that speed, so find that speed. So this is just the two sticks moving side to side. And then what I want to do is fly backwards. So the stick on the right, I'll start pulling back and this stick I'll start going up. With the same angle still, and then pull the gimbal down with this here at the same time. So that's a very complex movement, but the more you practice this, the better you'll get at it. So let's go again. And then start moving back. Now it's obviously very fast. So the next shot that I want to do is just a simple push, but I want to showcase some framing here. So as you can see, we have a few different leading lines here, and Emily is framed in the middle there. If we had her, say, in the rocks there, it just doesn't work. And even if she was in the water, it's not as powerful. Whereas here on the beach, you can really just see a lot of different textures and patterns going on. And she blends into the rock. So let's try one where we find her position there, and we're going to pull back here. I'm going to angle the camera down. Now what I'm going to do is start filming, fly forward with this stick, and then pretty much just a simple pull up with the gimbal, and just go super slow. Now she's off center. The drone has gone off center, but that's fine. Just don't do any jolty movements. We can always fix things in post-production as well. So now that we've done it that way, what I love doing now is a reveal shot. So what I'll do is I'll find where Emily is. I'll go at a safe height above her head, fly straight over, just to this point, and then start recording, and then I'll just do a simple pullback. And then she comes into frame. It's one of my favorite shots to do, is the reveal shot, and you can keep flying backwards. So the best way to do that is simply just fly the path that you want to do first straight over, so you can record that as you go. Find a point where you're comfortable, and just don't move your height. You can obviously, I can turn around and check that it's not too high as well, and then I can just fly straight backwards. And she was in a slightly different part of the frame there, but that worked. Now I want to try another shot similar to that. And this is going to be a little bit more of a risky shot, and this requires looking at the drone a lot more and turning it into sports mode. Because sports mode turns all these sensors off, which means it won't just stop randomly as we're flying. So there is a lot of obstructions here that will stop it, but I've checked the path, looks clear, and just fly it very slowly first. So basically just using the stick on the right to control the speed and movement. You don't need to use the other stick at all. So it can be very risky and scary doing those shots, especially because there is the risk to crash the drone, but if you just fly slowly, then it'll be fine. So the sun has gone down quite a bit now, so I'm going to change the ND filter real quick. That's how much it can change in just a few minutes. So ND8, and the exposure is a lot better there. So it does look a little bit too overexposed here, but because we are shooting in D-Log, it doesn't matter too much, and we can just change the angle a little bit. So what I'm going to do is get some close-up, top-down shots where we can really get the textures of this rock here. So a little tip, you can actually hit C1 on the back and the camera will just go straight down for these top-downs. Now I want to play around with some textures here, so I'll get a little bit close down to Emily, get her in the center of the frame roughly, and I'm going to fly straight up with this stick. Now we can do just a simple fly up, but what I like to do is actually put some movement in this as well. So practice going around in a circle like this. So depending on which way feels more comfortable, but you just want to go very slow. And then as you start spinning, start going up at the same time. And you'll find this motion where you're getting a really cool parallax effect. Sometimes you can go a little bit too fast, but then you just slow it down. Just find that movement. And you can just practice this 3 or 4 times until you get the shot. Now you can do the same sort of movement on the beach as well and incorporate different shots on the beach. a reveal shot here. So what I'm going to do is go down low to the rocks. On the other side, I can see the drone very clearly that there's nothing in the way there. And what I did is I'll fly up, see where Emily is, roughly there. And then I'll fly low down, start recording, go forwards, and then just up at the same time. And then you can pan the camera down very slightly as well. So as I said earlier, using similar shots is really important. So doing a similar orbit shot of this beach here will help the edit flow a lot better. So doing the same thing as I did earlier, where I fly in a circle, but a little bit quicker, and I'm locking on to pretty much that line on the beach there. So then we don't do a full 360 though, but we still have that orbit movement. So I want to do one more shot like that with Emily as well, but just slow. Start again. It's always important to watch her movements as well. If you do work with the subject, just make sure they're not like playing around with their hair too much or anything like that, and that they're ready for the shot. And then start moving around. Find that motion. Perfect. So I probably could have framed that a little bit better by going a bit lower. A little bit lower. Just line her head up pretty much with the top of the water there. And then same sort of movement. Perfect. Now, if you do have a zoom lens in your drone as well, it can be really good to get the same shot, but with the zoom lens. So it can be a lot harder to lock on because the movements with the zoom lens is a lot quicker. But if we do that same sort of motion, we can cut those two clips together. And then just keep going until you feel like you've got the shot. She's adding some movement there, which is cool. Super parallax effect. So that can obviously be a little bit too fast. So let's do a slower shot. So just watching the speed, go pretty slow. Cool. So now we've got a bunch of movement shots in the orbit. Okay, another simple shot that I like is doing a push and pull back. So get really close to the subject and low down as well, so you can't really see any of the landscape. And then just start flying backwards, start pushing up and pulling the gimbal down at the same time. And then I'm just going to do a simple push here as well. Just fly straight over, keeping her roughly in the center of the frame. Now, because it is windy, the drone is not perfectly in center and I do have to balance it out with this stick. Okay, so that's enough with Emily on the rock there as a subject. So now I'm just going to get some landscape shots as well and see what I can do with maybe the water and stuff like that. So we do have a fisherman down on this beach here. What I'm going to do is have them roughly in the center of the frame as well and just do a simple orbit. This is just my favorite kind of shot, is just doing a simple orbit around a subject, locking onto the same sort of position and just flying left or right and keeping that center locked on. So because this sun is still pretty high on the horizon, we can't actually get a complete flat shot. So I'm shooting on a 45-degree angle a lot of the time to get rid of that sun glare in that distance, but then we still have some really beautiful colors and tones in the sand here. So this is actually a cool looking shot here as well. So I'm gonna check my surroundings. Sometimes I put it in sports mode just so I can be a lot quicker. Make sure there's nothing in the way. And then I'm gonna fly very close to the sand here and then fly straight up. Extra props to Emily because she was pregnant standing on that rock. 6 months pregnant. Okay, so we got that first angle of this fisherman, but now I'm gonna get a top-down shot to match in as well. And I'm actually gonna change the shutter speed to 1/50 and the frame rate to 25 frames, just so I don't have to change the ND filter because the sun is setting pretty soon. So I'm gonna do the same sort of rocket movement. Oh, it was in sports mode, so it was going a bit too quick. But I can go down quite a bit lower. Now these spinning rocket shots can look really cool with waves. So if we can time it in with the waves. So just fly straight up and spin the drone. It can be very abstract. So that might be a little bit too quick with the spinning. Sometimes you just need a slight spin to it and it can be really effective. So it's also important to get some really high up shots as well, because we got a lot of low shots before, but if we want to showcase the landscape, make sure to get a lot of different high shots. For the really high shots, sometimes a simple push forward or push backwards is all you need, and just watching your speed as well. You don't want to go too fast, especially when we're shooting at 25 frames now. We do have a limit of what we can do in post-production. But what I'm seeing now is a sequence coming together in my head. So we have this really epic shot of a big long beach, and then we could cut to some of the close-ups of Emily on the hill there. So now I'm at this end of the beach, which has a completely different look. It looks absolutely epic right now, so I'm gonna get a photo there as well. But what I'm gonna do is actually do a orbit as well. So again, orbit shot, but as I said earlier, following that same movement is really handy when it comes down to editing and keeping the flow of a video. I'm gonna do one this way, going left. So locking that target point on the rocks in that rough area, flying left and then spinning the drone with the other stick. Now you'll notice that I'm actually putting my finger on the inside of this stick here, because I feel like I get a little bit more control when I'm doing it like that. Like I don't do the movement too quick, because this movement is what can throw it off. It can be really quick sometimes. So doing the slightest movement just by using your finger underneath, I think that helps a lot. But you can still use it the normal way as well. It's just whatever feels comfortable to you to get the softest movement. Now I'm just using the normal settings that the drone has. I haven't changed any of the parameters. So all the sticks have the same speed. The gimbal movement is the same speed as it comes with stock standard. Okay, go the other way now. So lock onto those rocks and just find that motion. The more you practice, the easier it gets, trust me. Such a sick sunset right now.
Will return to the home point in 10 seconds.
So the drone battery is getting low and the sun has pretty much set anyway. So the last shot that I want to get is probably just a low down shot of the waves. I probably should have got it when there was a little bit more light so we can get a bit more blue in the water. Okay, now I'm going to do a fly up over these rocks here. Pretty low to the water, but I can see my height is pretty good. And then just slowly fly up, avoiding these rocks. The closer you get, the cooler it looks, obviously, but just be careful. Okay, we are at very low battery now, so I'm gonna come land. So it looks like there's some clouds on the horizon blocking the sun, but if there was some clouds in the sky, I probably would have got the drone up again just to get those pink hues, but I don't think we're gonna get much. There's a little bit of cloud in the sky. To be honest, I'm pretty happy with those shots, and I think that covered most of the movements I want to discuss. Now in the next part, I'm going to discuss tracking moving subjects, which is a lot harder and more complex, but the more you practice again, the easier it gets. And I'll discuss some of my techniques, but a lot of it has to do with keeping that grid line in the center of frame and just using that as like a target point to track whatever subject you're tracking Similar to what we're doing here with the orbit shots, just keeping that in the same spot. So if you're out there shooting with your drone, put that grid line on that looks like a X. Just find some random things, rocks, trees, or anything like that, and just practice keeping that in the frame. Because when it comes to shooting a subject, you can use those skills that you learn manually flying to track and get epic shots of subjects. So I hope you enjoyed this section, and I'll see you in the next part.